I gotta tell you, when Pastor Judson came to me and asked me to speak this morning, it took me several weeks to give an answer back. And I'll explain more later why, but now that I got in here, there was three things that were kind of promised to me, and I gotta tell you, it's not off to a good start. Number one, he said Mike and Dwight was gonna take up 50 minutes of the hour. Nope. Number two, holiday weekend. There'll be hardly anybody here. Okay. Number three was that once you get up there, the time will go fast. So I'm a little doubtful on that one after the first two promises there. But we'll see how it goes. Again, the topic is kind of obvious as we came. As I said, I'm out of my comfort zone, stratosphere, galaxy, and universe. But God controls all of that, so we're gonna go with that. As we talked about, Mike was hitting on a lot of great things with the Constitution and how we forget those things. I started thinking about our country, the 4th of July, and what we celebrate, and how they want to change it, how they want to change the fundamentals of the country. And yet, but I hear in the business world, all I hear about is mission statement and keeping a culture and keeping that culture and everybody being part of that culture. Well, I don't think it's more important than anywhere else than in our country to keep that mission statement, if you will, or that culture that we've built. Yes, we have to adjust it as we go forward. Absolutely. We try to improve our country. We try to adapt to the changing times, the changing technologies, the changing things that come along, both God created and man created. But really, assimilation still needs to be a large part of what our country is about. And there's so many immigrants over the years that have just made the contributions and come through and went through. And I know I probably couldn't pass the citizenship test. I mean, it's a difficult process. But boy, what they learned during that process, and to come into our country and really appreciate what we have. And sometimes we don't do that. Like you say, we can forget if we don't appreciate. And so we really need to hold on to what we have. And that consistency, but that culture, it's called freedom. That's the name I have on it. And I would like to ask as we start, when somebody says the word freedom, what comes to your mind? I'd like to hear just a couple people. They would raise their hand and just, what comes to your mind first of all? What's that? God set us free? Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We can pray.
We can pray?
Pray because it's a free country.
Yep, absolutely.
And
We have a right.
God gave us our freedoms.
Yes,
Not the state, not the government.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, and that sets a perfect example of what I'm going to talk about this morning related to freedom. Anytime you ever think of freedom, usually it's freedom to, and the word is freedom to, with the word T-O behind it. But I want to look and just go over some biblical verses. I'm not a scholar. I'm not here I can't dig as deep as Pastor Judson certainly can, but we want to look at what the Bible says about, I broke it down into freedom to, freedom from, and then basically to be cautious not to misuse our freedoms and how that we can actually harm God's message and his plans by some of the things we do if we abuse the freedoms that we do have. So that's kind of how I looked at it. And as far as the dictionary goes, freedom defines it as the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. And I think that's in line with what was just spoken here this morning. The other one, the state of not being imprisoned or enslaved. And so definitely things that sometimes we take for granted, but certainly should appreciate each and every day. So I'm going to start, feel free to follow along with the Bibles, your Bibles. We're going to go pretty quickly through these, and like I say, some Old Testament, some New Testament, most are New Testament. As I was showing Pastor Judson, I said, well, kind of an outline what I had. He goes, oh, I do have some King James versions in here of the verses. I have the Living Bible in here when I really wanted it where I could understand it. And you'll see that as we go, it kind of thing. And one of the things, I think Priscilla was talking about the rights from God, not from man, not from state, not from government. And as we go forward, we see that we can't forget that. And I saw just a little statement as I was doing some of the background work for today. And it said, we need men who petition God, P-E-T-I-T-I-O-N, rather than position, P-O-S-I-T-I-O-N, themselves. And I think that's a matter of getting your priorities straight, realizing where blessings come from, where fortune comes from, and yes, where some rough times are allowed to happen as well. But it is all, like I say, who is in control, and that is God. And so we look at this, this was over 2,000 years ago. These words were spoken, but I'm going to start with Psalm 119:45. Basically short and sweet, as many of the Psalms are. And I will walk at liberty, for I seek thy precepts. And I think you can flip that and say, because I seek thy precepts, or God's way of doing things, then I can then walk at liberty. And that pretty much cuts to the chase. And again, before Jesus was ever around, David and the Old Testament times was pretty adamant and pretty clear there. And then you have some verses in the New Testament, a couple of them in James. We looked at that book not that long ago, and again, a lot of material in James. In chapter 1, verse 25, this is the Living Bible. But if anyone keeps looking steadily into God's law for freedom, he will not only remember it, but he will do what it says. And God will greatly bless him in everything he does. Again, where is the foundation? Where is the rock? Where do we start? Is in God's law. And if you talk to the secular world, when they always want to talk about religion, never about relationship, never about God, Jesus. No, they'll talk about God, not Jesus. And but they always think of restrictions. Oh my goodness, you have no freedoms if you're a Christian, a true Christian who has that relationship. You don't have any freedoms. It's all about what you can't do. Oh my gosh, it's the Ten Commandments. And it's literally they realize that there are many, many freedoms that come from that relationship with God. In 2 verse 12, in James again, you'll be judged on by the law of liberty, whether or not you are doing what Christ wants you to do. So watch what you do and what you think, for there will be no mercy shown. There will be no mercy to those who have shown no mercy. And again, what do you look at? What do you look for first? The simplest of things, the freedoms we have, whether what university I want to go to, what job I want to take or not take, or leave, maybe leave. It's all freedoms, but we should be, if it's God's will, looking at that first and foremost. Then the domino effect from that should be that He will bless us, He will open doors, He will close doors, but certainly He will show us the way if we will listen. Another thing I saw, it's not a coincidence that silent and listen both have the same letters in it, just rearranged a little bit differently. And sometimes you just got to step back, you got to be silent, so that you have a chance to listen and really hear what God wants you to do. And moving back to in John 8, chapter 8, verses 31 and 32, then said Jesus to those Jews which believed on him, if ye continue in my word, then are ye my disciples indeed. And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. That's one of the ones that's quoted quite a bit. A lot of them, a lot of times, you know, as I look around, I try to keep up on current events and so forth. And I think the Bible is, if not probably the greatest document, the greatest book, the greatest set of statutes that is piecemeal. People pick out and cherry pick what they want for what they want to say. And I think as you dig deeper into these, the whole verses, it really does set a consistent picture that we need to have things in moderation, that we need to have priorities straight, and that you know, there is freedom in what God will give you, and you just can't outgive God. You can't outdo Him, and certainly if He does not, if it's not in His plans, it's not going to happen no matter what you say. So those are kind of 4 verses that really came to kind of coincide with what comes to first comes to mind for I think most people, and that's freedom too. But then we go to freedom from. And really the common theme here is freedom from the chains that bind us. In Isaiah 61:1, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because the Lord hath anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to them that are bound. And this freedom knows no boundaries. As a matter of fact, Luke 4:18, almost to the letter, is quoting the same thing. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because He hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised. In the Old Testament, you know, we had the laws, so to speak, that everybody had to follow and very few could follow. And they had the 7th year where the slaves were set free during that time. In the New Testament, you had the exiles. Basically, when they didn't follow God, Jerusalem was, all the Jews were exiled, they were spread out, and God promised to bring them back, and He did do that. So, a couple meetings there that it's just interesting to see the coordination between the Old Testament and the New Testament. As we look at Paul in Romans 8:21, for all creation is waiting patiently and hopefully for that future day when God will resurrect His children. For on that day, thorns and thistles, sin, death, and decay, the things that overcame the world against its will at God's command, will all disappear. And the world around us shall share in the glorious freedom from sin which God's children enjoy. Paul again, 2 Corinthians 3:17. The Lord is the Spirit who gives us life, and where He is, there is freedom. Freedom from the Old Testament laws. Freedom of, if we believe in Jesus Christ, that He died and was rose again, that we have that freedom from the sins that we're bound to commit. But we Christians have no veil over our faces. We can be mirrors that brightly reflect the glory of God. And as the Spirit of the Lord works within us, we become more and more like Him. And a lot of these verses, the King James uses the word liberty. It's kind of interchanged with freedom. And going into Galatians, and that because of false brethren, unawares brought in, who came in privately to spy out our liberty which we have in Christ Jesus, that they might bring us into bondage, to whom we gave place by subjection, no, not for an hour, that the truth of the gospel might continue with you. You think we face that today? You think there's many people, they hate our contentment, they hate our joy, which is certainly far different than happiness and temporary feeling. But they're always, you know, it's one of the few things that can still be attacked as Christians. They to spy out our liberty which we have in Christ Jesus, that they might bring us into bondage. They seem to, you know, the old saying, misery loves company. They seem to want to bring us back to that level, back to where we were at one time, how we were born as sinners. And sometimes it can be tough overlooking that and looking at the big picture and sharing their joy. They're not our enemy. We just need to basically exemplify by our actions and when the opportunity comes by our words. Sometimes if you go at it the other way around, you get shut down pretty quick with the words. So it really has to be how we live our lives. In Galatians 5:1, it says, Christ has made us free. Now make sure that you stay free and don't get all tied up again in the chains of slavery to Jewish laws and ceremonies. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then. Do not let yourself be burdened again by the yoke of slavery to the law. It is faith that matters, and only faith. So those are the verses I had the freedom from. And like I say, it is the burdens, the slavery to sin, and so forth. And that is the freedom that most of the world does not understand. They just don't see it. And maybe sometimes it's how we purvey it. Like I say, religion is not the answer. The relationship with God is. And sometimes we have to keep it simple, so to speak. And I think about that as VBS is coming up. And what chance, really to jump into those children. I see VBS and Awana. I see the two most outreaches I think our church does. Just the fact that we are planting those seeds into younger people and giving them a chance. They're still going to grow up and make different choices when they get older. Some will leave the church altogether. Some will fall away and come back from that foundation. And others will stick with the church through their whole lives. But we have to give them that head start and that chance. So, along with that freedom that we have responsibility. In 1 Corinthians 8:9 it says, don't tempt fellow Christians, but be careful not to use your freedom. But take heed lest by any means that liberty of yours become a stumbling block to them that are weak. We do have different people facing different circumstances. We have Christians that are new, some that have been growing for years and decades. I think back to my growth personally. As I sat here today, I had to sit here and check my watch. It wasn't the time, it was date and year. I saw jacket, calendar, I saw the Dronas here in the pews, and I'm like, man, can we step back how many years? And it was great to see. And you never know how God brings things full circle. You just never know where you'll end up. Truth is always stranger than fiction. And a lot of people, you hear about the karma. You hear about the odds, and just, oh man, isn't that something that thinks the stars lined up that way? Really? Well, there's a reason the stars lined up the way they lined up. And I know Lewis follows the outer, the space, and really interested in that. And the more you look at it, just the more in awe you are. We shared it several times in our Ecclesiastes study and a men's Bible study this summer. So it is amazing. And then again, Galatians 5:13, for brethren, ye have been called unto liberty. Only use not liberty for an occasion to the flesh, but by love serve one another as free, and not using your liberty for a cloak of maliciousness, but as the servants of God. And so, and lastly, 2 Peter 2:19, false teachers, deal with false teachers. You aren't saved by being good, they say, so you might as well be bad. Well, a lot of people like to end that quote there. Do what you like, be free. But these very teachers who offer this freedom from law are themselves slaves to sin and destruction. For a man is a slave to whatever controls him. And again, no matter what you look at, God doesn't call all of us to be pastors or preachers. God doesn't call all of us to be in church 7 days a week. He talks about moderation and just keeping the priorities straight. But that's our choice, and that's the choices we make with the freedoms we have. Some people in the world don't have those freedoms to make those choices. And they do some pretty brave things to do the same things that we are doing. And God, and God works in mysterious ways in countries you never dream of. In some of the Middle Eastern countries and some of the countries like Iran, Christianity is growing more than more than you would ever think of. The numbers are higher than you would ever dream of. And, but how do they do that? Well, they're making some tough choices, and they have to risk their lives, basically, to share the word and even to believe the word and to live out that in their life. Again, we need the men who petition God rather than position themselves. And I heard a quote, there was a quote from Dr. Tim Keller. He said, "We are more sinful and flawed in ourselves than we ever dared believe. Yet at the very same time, we are more loved and accepted in Jesus Christ than we ever dared hope." And there's very much the truth in that. Flaws, I'm good at. Even getting up here today, thinking, being worthy to get up here and talk today, the devil plays with you. You have some weird thoughts like, man, if I flood this up good enough, well enough, Pastor won't ask me again. And you just, all kinds of thoughts run through your mind. And you never let down your guard. And that's a choice you have to make with the freedoms that we have. And so, before I close, it's kind of great. We have a great opportunity here later on with some new members. And Mike actually read something I was going to cover as well, so that saves a little time here to open up. But I did want to read two things related to the Independence Declaration. And these are just quotes. On every question of construction, let us carry ourselves back to the time when the Constitution was adopted. Recollect the spirit manifested in the debates, and instead of trying what meaning may be squeezed out of the text or invented against it, conform to the probable one in which it was passed. That was Thomas Jefferson. Two more quotes. If, to please the people, we offer what we ourselves disapprove, how can we afterwards defend our work? Let us raise a standard in which the wise and honest can repair. The event is in the hand of God. The power under the Constitution will always be in the people. It is entrusted for certain divine purposes and for a certain limited period to representatives of their own choosing. And whenever it is executed contrary to their interest or not agreeable to their wishes, their servants can undoubtedly, and undoubtedly will be recalled. Both of those are from George Washington. And the foresight that was shown by, and the thought that was put into the independence, because it was, a lot of it was raw bank. What England was doing and so forth, and just, the taxation without representation and all the things behind it. But man, they turned to God, and they thought, and they did it purposely, and I don't think man today could even write anything close to it. I think we write for the short term, and God knows the long term. And those choices are there for us every day. And the question is how we respond. I said yes to Pastor Judson for this morning. 10 years ago, probably would have said no. I wouldn't even have dreamed of this. It's fun to watch God, and I wanted to give some examples of what we see yesterday, last month, this week, and even today that we see. But Pastor Judson, a lot of times will ask for testimonies and so forth, and I don't usually speak up. I like to hear other people speak, and it's if the air is dead, I'll raise my hand, but I don't. But I just thought I'd share something today. I think I shared with a few people, but not very many. And me personally, some things that just change your life. And 5.5 years ago, on February 21st, 2018, Nancy and I were in the middle of some pretty tough times with family. Little did I know that within 8 months, both my parents would pass away and so forth. But I was traveling, just like any other day. I was on business travel. And I left Minneapolis, St. Paul. It was February, but it wasn't super cool. It wasn't super snowy. We had to get de-iced. We were late. Got down to Dallas. I was going to Little Rock, Arkansas. And Got down, as soon as I landed, beep, 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 my phone as I turn on goes off, your flight's canceled, blah, 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 come see us at customer service. I go do that, they say, oh, yeah, well, we've got you rescheduled for tomorrow morning. Well, I was only supposed to be there till 6 o'clock the next day. I'm like, I'll turn around and get back on the plane again. I said, anything else you can do? I said, okay. They said, okay, we have well, the 115's full, because of your flight being canceled. We have a 415, and this storm was so big, they were de-icing in Dallas. And de-icing in Dallas is a little bit different than de-icing in Minneapolis. It really puts a stop to things. And so I get there, they go, and I say, oh, thank you. They said, it's okay. Well, I don't have a seat. Can't sign your seat, but you have a place on that 415 flight. I said, great. That's all I needed. Thank you. I'll be able to get there tonight, work all day tomorrow. So I get in there. I go do some work in the airport. About lunchtime, grab a bite to eat. I went down, it's 12:30. I said, I'll just walk over to the 115 flight. Can't hurt. Got nothing else to do. So I went over, and I looked up, and I was number 3 on the standby. And I said, oh, I got a chance. I'm like, but of course everything was being backed up. 2 o'clock, 2:30. Looked at the clock. Things looked good for 3:50. And so they get, and they load the plane. They start calling. They call 4 hours. And I'm like, oh man, this is my lucky day. Little did I know. So we get on the plane. Everybody's looking. We're the last ones on. Moving over, center seat, of course. Come back. All of a sudden, we're not backing away. Here comes some more. American Airlines as the one represents on the plane. They start whispering. Too much weight, we need to get them off. Oh, great. So I get the smirks and smiles from my neighbors. And I get up, grab my bag, go back to the terminal, inside the jetway, go to the desk, just get ready to ask, what are my options as I'm thinking? You probably canceled me off the 415 flight now that you had me on this one. And before I even could ask that question, person walks up and says, we get one more on. There's room for one more. I said, that's me. I said, thank you. Sure enough, I got on. Got the jokes from the neighbors on the plane. Welcome back. We sure were leaving. Everybody still had the doubts. But we got away about 3:15, 3:30. It's a short flight to Little Rock. Landed about 4:30 or so. Go check into my hotel. Go to dinner. Meanwhile, during that time that we were backed up, that 4:15 flight was backed up. 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. I go to dinner. Didn't want much to eat. Quickly, I went to Chick-fil-A. I still remember it this day. And went up about a mile, turned left out the road, and I saw a huge hospital sitting up on the hill there. And I go out, I go eat. I got the sandwich, the fries, the drink, sweet tea, of course. And went ahead and treated myself to lunch. I was eating fast food that night. And usually I'll drink it in between, my other meal and alternate. But I saved it to the end. And then I sucked it down. And it wasn't peach because it was February, but it was good. Get back in my car, no more start up the car, back up the thing. My heart starts racing, sweat starts coming. And I thought, oh, it's like brain freeze, except it's my body reacting to milkshake. So I pull out, I head back, it was raining, and it was raining hard. So I turn, I see the hospital up there, I turn and go to my hotel. I go, then my arm started getting the pains down. I'm like, oh boy, this is not good, this is not for the milkshake. So I hurry up and get through 2 red lights, I get to my hotel, and I still actually had the stupidity to walk in the lobby. I looked at the front desk clerk, I looked at the elevators, and I was thinking, do I just go up and rest and lay down? Or do I go over here? I said, 5 minutes in that chair, if I'm not getting any better, I'm talking to the front desk guy. 5 minutes, didn't get any better, go talk to the front desk guy. He comes in, he goes, and we're playing across the lobby, 20 questions with the 911 person, right? They want to know everything, and I couldn't talk to him directly, so he's relaying everything. Finally, I said, are they sending somebody? I said, after about the 20th question. They said, yeah, the hospital's right up the hill. They'll be there in just a minute. I'm like, great. Sure enough, they got there quickly. No more, they got me in the ambulance, hooked me up. They were talking to the ER. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't know if I made the right decision or not. I'd call you guys. And as soon as he hooked me up, I said, yeah, you made the right decision. And so then I started thinking, and it was about 7:30. I go in, I started thinking about my other flight. And what if I was on that flight? What if I was in the air? A lot of people would say, coincidence. Oh, that was fortunate. I don't think so. I think God was looking out for that in that place. When they said there's room for one more, just like there's room for one more to offer that salvation for somebody. But anyway, called my wife about 8:15. Said, Annie, I'm getting ready to get surgery. She was just walking out of Awana and from there. And I said, yeah, I'm here. They're going to do stents. I'm having a heart attack. And so, yeah, I was in my hospital room by 11. I can still remember one nurse coming in about, they wake you up every 2 hours, one about Tuesdays. Look at my chart. Oh, back to back. Oh, that's the Widowmaker. And I'm like, thanks. But thankful I was laying in a hospital bed and not again. I still think back if I would have been in midair during that time. And God is looking out for the long term. And so what decisions maybe I make differently now from that standpoint than back then. And God is so amazing. Melanie, I know Jen's talked to you the last few weeks. And did you ever think when you tried to get out of that horrible job you had, you're thinking, gee, if I could get to a place where my parents ever have issues, that I could be near them and stuff like that. I don't think so, right? But God sees further ahead, and he lines you up. And then I look this week, and I'm not going to get into politics at all, but what happened this week is because president we had from 2017 to 2021, he may never get back in that office again. But you know what? And he's worried about 4 more years. But my goodness, the chance of 3 Supreme Court justices being appointed in a 4-year presidency, I don't know if it's ever happened before. I'm not a history buff. But I think of the legacy of what will happen from that. And what just did happen this week is much bigger than he said in the presidency for 4 years. And so God never stops working. Even as we sing some of these songs, they're just amazing. Touching on these things here. So I wanted to share that. I just want to say, so the next time you're asked that you need to make a decision, please keep God top of mind. Please keep, the old saying, what would Jesus do? But what will your choices be when choices and opportunities arise? Maybe it's the choice of giving your life to God and accept the gift of salvation. Maybe it's a neighbor who's not a believer, or of a different political persuasion. What will be your free will answer to the choice you had? That's all I have this morning. If we can just pray real quick, then we do have one more privilege that we're going to have here. And so we can bow our heads and just pray. God, thank you for the words you gave me today. We just pray that each person here would hear them, would share them, and make known your will, that you would make your will known in their lives, and that they would follow that will and follow those freedoms. Do not take not one choice for granted, and always be thankful for the freedoms that we do have. In Jesus' name we pray.
Thank you, Pete. I think we may ask again? Yes. All right. Thank you.